Sing, O muse of Croesus, son of Aliates, ruler of golden Sardis, who bathed in the wealth of the Pactolus and thought himself favored by the gods. No man in all the world, not even the lords of Egypt or Babylon, could match the treasures hoarded in his halls, great mountains of gold, rivers of silver, and the tribute of 100 conquered lands. The kings of the earth sent envoys bearing gifts, merchants knelt before him, and poets sang of his unshakable throne. And so Croesus, wrapped in the splendor of his riches, mistook their luster for destiny. Did not the sun rise over Lydia each morning? Did not his name carry the weight of divine favor? He ruled as though his power were the very stone of his palace, eternal, immovable. The wise man Solon once stood in his court, an ant before a lion, and Croesus in his magnanimity deigned to ask, "Tell me, O Greek, have you ever seen a man more blessed than I?" Solon, a traveler of many lands, did not answer in haste, for he had seen cities crumble into dust, kings fall as wheat before the sickle, and riches scatter like autumn leaves. "Call no man happy until his end," he said, "for fortune is a wheel that does not stand still." Croesus laughed. For what wheel could cast him down? Was he not seated upon the highest peak? But the fates, who weave the destinies of men upon their spindle, do not listen to the boasts of kings. In the east, beyond the river Halys, a new power was rising. Cyrus of Persia, a wolf among sheep, whose armies moved like a tide, swallowing one kingdom after another. Yet Croesus, lord of Lydia, feared nothing. His soothsayers, their palms heavy with his gold, read the omens in his favor. His counselors, their lips sweet with the honey of his table, whispered that Persia was but a fledgling, its power no match for the might of Sardis. And when he sent envoys to Delphi, the great oracle spoke in riddles. "If you cross the Halys, you will destroy a great empire." Croesus heard these words, and his heart soared. The gods had spoken, and their voices sang of his triumph. He gathered his war host, summoning the spears of Lydia, the bowmen of Phrygia, the horsemen of Cappadocia. The sky above Sardis darkened with the dust of his marching legions, his banners unfurled like the wings of an eagle. And so he crossed the Halys, never once thinking that the empire fated for ruin might be his own. The two armies met upon the plain, and for a time the gods allowed the Lydians to stand. Spears clashed, chariots thundered, and the earth drank deeply of blood. But Cyrus, with the cunning of a fox, turned the tide. He drove his camels before him, beasts unfamiliar to Lydian war horses who reared and fled in terror. Croesus, watching from his golden chariot, felt the first crack in his unshakable world. The battle was lost, but Sardis still stood, its walls high, its gates strong. The king retreated, confident that winter would shield him, that Cyrus would turn back, that fate would yet bend to his will. But fate does not wait upon kings. Cyrus followed as the storm follows the ship, relentless and unyielding. Before the snows could fall, his armies stood at the gates of Sardis. The city, which had never known siege, fell in 14 days. The golden halls were plundered, the great palaces emptied, and Croesus, once the master of nations, was bound in iron chains. They led him to a great pyre, and as the flames licked at the wood, Croesus, king of Lydia, ruler of countless treasures, cried out, not to his gods nor to his armies, but to the name of a lone Athenian, "Solon, Solon, Solon." Cyrus, curious, halted the fire. He asked the fallen king what word this was, what wisdom it held, and Croesus, with the smoke of his ruin in his lungs, spoke at last. "Solon once told me that no man should be called happy until his end, for fortune turns as the wheel does. And so I see now my wealth, my power, my pride. They were but shadows cast upon the sand, washed away by the tide." Cyrus, hearing this, saw in Croesus not a beaten king, but a man who had glimpsed the folly of all rulers. And so, in a gesture rare among conquerors, he stayed the fire and took Croesus into his court, not as a prisoner, but as an advisor. No longer a king, no longer a master of gold, Croesus learned to wield wisdom as he once wielded power. He spoke in measured words, advising Cyrus when to strike and when to hold his hand. And though he could never reclaim his throne, he survived. Where prouder rulers had perished, the wheel had turned and yet he endured. But will lords of other lands, the rulers who sit atop golden thrones and believe themselves immune to ruin, will they listen? Or will they, like Croesus before them, see only the sun above and not the storm below? For the fates spin on, and the wheel does not stop.